Hi there, we're going to take a look at the version 3 CCIE collaboration topology and some additions that I have not mentioned before in my learning management system videos. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at what's going on. So here is the updated and possibly final topology that we're going to be using at Collab Cert. So there's 5 sites, as there was in the previous version as well. And by far and away the most important and biggest site is the headquarters site. So let's start off with that. I'm going to just do a little bit of scribbling around as well. So if we take a look at the core manager at headquarters, so the core manager, we've got a publisher, and it's publishing its database to a subscriber, and we've always had that. We've had that from day one in CCIE voice collaboration, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to just quickly reference this the table of IP addresses and credentials, and if we take a look at the 192.100.64.11, that's the pub. .12 is the sub. The second octet represents the type of traffic, server in our case, appliance server, and the third octet represents the site, 64 being the headquarters site. So 64.11 and 64.12, and then we've had that since day one. But what's new is, if I look at the IMP, which is also part of the cluster, we've always had a publisher, and now we've added for the purposes of redundancy, high availability, we have this subscriber IMP node that's been added to our v3 topology. And if I take a look at the IP addresses, we've got .17 and .18. Moving on, we've got the Unity connection. Again, we've operated previously in a single node, can't spell pub, a single node Unity connection, and we've got it publishing its database to a subscriber Unity connection now. IP addresses there being .15 and .16. So then we also have contact center. And this is the big one for me. With contact center, it consumes, if you deploy the OVA template, 150 gig disk, 10 gig memory, and dual core. So a lot of resources here, and we have a publisher contact center publishing its database to a subscriber. In all cases, in the lab, we'll be asking maybe to make one the primary, one the master in the case of contact center, the other being the slave or the backup. Doesn't necessarily mean the publisher is the primary node. Quite the contrary. In most cases, we could either load balance or we can make the subscriber as the primary node, and that's all defined within the lab requirements. So those are the sort of traditional UCM core manager appliances that we've had in the past. So we've added these 3 extra virtual machines, a subscriber in the IMP, Unity, and contact centers case. Now we do also have a session manager edition of core manager, and this is just a standalone publisher. So I'm going to operate that as a single node entity right now, no backup, and the IP address for those last few nodes. For the contact center, it's .19 and 20. For the SME, it's .14, as we had in the version 2 of the blueprint. So, if we go back to this, we dealt with the contact center, we dealt with the SME, the IMP, the Unity, and the core managers. So let's just take a look at some of the other appliances there, or virtual machines. We have this Windows 10 box over here, Jabber 12.5, running on Windows 10 over there. And the IP address of that guy is, now it's not on the server, it's our data traffic. So over here it's 202.64.11, that's our HQ PC, and that's running all the tools that the candidate is going to be using, Notepad++, Firefox with on the bookmarks folder, all the shortcuts to the appliances. We have Translator X, RTMT, the contact center editor potentially. So this is a important PC. That's where you're going to remote desktop into from the candidate workstation, and you can access all the appliances from here. So then you also have a DNS server. This is running Windows 2016, or it could be running Windows 2012 R2. It really doesn't make much difference. It's very important because obviously it's running DNS. it's running Active Directory, and it's also running the Microsoft Certificate Authority. So whenever you need to sign a certificate signing request and create a certificate, it's going to be done on here or the other Windows 2016/2012 R2 box, which is that external DNS over here. So the IP address of the DNS server is 164.9 over there, and the domain name I'm using is CCIE-Collab.com. Obviously they're not using that domain name in the real lab environment, but that's what we're using at CollabCert. So this leads us on to, I want to do a tally or count all the number of appliances we have. So I mentioned HQ PC there, I mentioned the HQ DNS as well. And this is where we've got some major changes. Beforehand, we had a standalone Cisco meeting server, so obviously you couldn't have any redundancy or resiliency there. And with the scalable and resilient deployment model, you need an odd number of Cisco meeting servers, so 3 or 5 with resiliency and redundancy. So we've added 2 more Cisco meeting servers. We've got CMS 1, 2, and 3. In addition, we've got a Cisco meeting management server, which helps with the administration of setting up meetings and that kind of stuff. It's not that important, I don't think, in the context of the IE exam, but we do have the appliance there added. And there's another 4 machines then, 3 CMS and 1 CMM. So if I take a look over here, the IP addresses there are CMS is 6431, 41, and 51. That's our CMS 1, 2, and 3. And then we also have this CMM standalone module, which is .32. I didn't bother with the resiliency over there. So there's 4 more appliances. And so let's go back to our diagram. We've dealt with the CMS and the CMM over there. The VCube. The VCube is a big one because you got the VCube. So we have VCube 1 and VCube 2. And this is your interface to the backbone, the SIP trunk, our CenturyLink SIP provider, if you like. So VCube 1 and 2, we have 2 interfaces that are pre-configured. One is on the HQ voice network. This is our HQ, not server, but HQ voice network. So those IP addresses are VCube 1 is 102. See the 102, the second octet there, meaning it's not on the server VLAN, it's on the voice VLAN. And 64, 151, and 152. And then we have an interface. This is actually gig 2 on the CSR 1000V, and this was gig 1 on the CSR 1000V, and this is on the backbone network, which is where our SIP provider is located. So the IP addresses there are well, I'm not defined that, but it is. It's on the same as the backbone network, which is 157. So it's 157.26.1, 151, and 152. So the same last octet, but the first 3 octets are changed from the HQ voice to the backbone IP subnet. So 157.26.1.151 and 152. And those 2 interfaces are pre-configured, and they're going to eventually form a virtual IP address because we're going to have high availability and resiliency. So you need this gig 3, you need this third interface, which is not configured. You would have to do this as part of the lab tasks. It doesn't really matter too much what the IP address is, but they need to be connected to the same physical switch as well. And so this is important for the control and that resiliency and the high availability of the 2 VCubes. So there is a virtual IP address. When we're talking to the backbone, there's a virtual MAC and virtual IP. When we're talking to the core manager, there's a virtual IP here, which is not defined in the table I mentioned, but I showed you, but it's defined as part of the lab tasks. But I'm just going to tell you what we're using: 157.26.1.250 over here, and we're using 192.102.64.250 over here. And so this is the IP address that's important. The physical IP addresses are important for telnetting into the box, but in terms of SIP traffic being sourced and being receiving, it's these 2 virtual IP addresses that are the most important IP addresses. So those are our two VCubes then. So again, we're going to add these up at the end of it. We've got VCube 1 and VCube 2. Let's proceed to the collaboration edge infrastructure. And this is obviously where we have our MRAs on this simulated internetwork simulation. I got my words jumbled up there a little bit, but how do we log in on the Jabber Windows client from the internet? Well, we have the expressway E and C. So traditionally what we've had in the past is we've had a C connected to an E. Typically we always show this with a firewall to symbolize the fact that the E over here is in DMZ, and there is a firewall here as well. So the C has traditionally had a single interface, has a single interface. The E's had a dual interface, so that advanced networking option key has been loaded onto it. One of the interfaces on the E is on the HQ server, and the other is on the backbone network as well. So what we've done then in version 3 is we've got a C1 and C2. So we're going to have some high availability. We're going to form a cluster, and we're going to have E1 and the expressway E2, and we're going to form a cluster over here. So there's a bit more work involved before you set up that traversal zone and get MRA working. So the expressways then have, if I look at expressway C, we have 164.22, and we have the second expressway, which is the same IP address with a 0 on the end, 220. And the expressway E, we've always had 64.21. Well, and there's the backbone as well, the 157.26.1.21. But we've also added this second appliance here with a 0 at the end in terms of IP addressing. So we've got then another expressway C, 1 and 2. And we've got expressway E, 1 and 2. And I think that's about it at the headquarters, if that wasn't enough. Okay, that brings us on to our, we were talking about MRA just then, but our public network here has a PC, Windows 10 box running Jabber 12.5. And obviously, we need to be on an edge network. How does that Jabber realize it's on the edge network? By the service location record. And so there's over here it's Collab Edge, where over here it's going to be Cisco UDS. So we need to have a DNS server simulated on the internet and a PC out there on the internet as well. So we have this on the public network, and there's the two IP addresses of the DNS and the PC respectively. So again, it doesn't really matter whether it's Windows 12 R2 or Windows 2016, and Windows 10 is the client machine over here. So again, we are adding up these, so I'm going to put public DNS, and we've got, and this is more or less a clone of the HQ DNS, and a public PC as well, running Jabber 12.5. So that will lead us on to the next site, which is the backbone. Again, this is something that's not accessible to the candidate, apart from the fact that, by the way, I'm missing a VCube here. The PC over here, you launch this, you RDP into this machine, and Jabber 12.5 is going to fire up, and it's already registered to a backbone core manager. The core manager has these predefined route patterns pointing to a SIP trunk. So this is our PSTN simulation. And so this involves having 3 virtual machines. So you log in as a candidate on the backbone PC running Jabber. There is a backbone UCM, which the Jabber registers to, pre-configured, and that will be sending all of its calls to a backbone VCube, CSL 1000V. These are preloaded dial pairs, pre-configured dial pairs, that points to the HQ VCube virtual IP address on the backbone side, and obviously that will point to the SME or somewhere internally. So we have these 3 virtual machines in the backbone. Only one is accessible by you, but if you're building your own rack, you kind of have to be the proctor as well as the candidate at the same time. I've talked about the route patterns and the configuration of this backbone core manager in my building a lab course on my learning management system, and also my dial pairs that I've got here on my voice translation profiles. That's all covered in the building a backbone course in that module I just mentioned. So the important thing here is you're talking and receiving calls from a virtual IP address on the headquarters site. So there we go. You've got the backbone 3 appliances here. So that will be the IP addresses. Let's just go with that first. .10 is the core manager. .11 is the PC, and .100 is the VCube. So we've got backbone. I'm just going to put backbone times 3 over there, and those are our main sites. And just to complete it off, we do have a site B. Now I've drawn there may be at some point an IMP and a Unity connection. I have them already configured, already added and built, but I'm keeping them switched off for now. But so I'm going to ignore those for now because most of our work is concentrated on the IMP and Unity over here. I'm not too focused on Unity connection networking at this point in time. So we do have a core manager and a Windows 10 machine running Jabber 12.5, which is a clone of this HQ PC, obviously with a different IP address on a different network. So we just have the 2 virtual machines at site B, and if I look at those, they are over here. It's 202.65.11 is the PC. Remember 202 being the data subnet, and then the site B publisher is the 165.11 over here. And so whenever the two clusters talk to each other, they all HQ and site B, they'll always go through the SME, which is like your broker in the middle there. So there's 2 machines here. I'm ignoring that one for now. So 2 machines there, and let's add that to our list before we count them up at the end. So we got site B, I'm putting times 2, PC and the core manager. And then finally, we just have a site C PC. Remember, you don't have any 8845 devices or phones in this version, so you're relying on Jabber primarily as your client device. So this is just another Windows 10 box running Jabber that you could use as your phone. So rather than having phones, we have more Windows machines running Jabber. So there's nothing else over here at Site C. This was used extensively in the previous blueprint for the troubleshooting section. A lot of the troubleshooting tickets were located here, but that's now gone. We've obviously got that design module instead. So I still have a Site C, but just as a PC on a different network. So we have that. Now if I go and add them all up, I think we have 29. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21 at HQ, 3 at the backbone giving you 24, 2 at the site B giving you 26, 1 at the site C giving you 27, and 2 at the public network. So you have 29 virtual machines when you're talking about running a CCIE Collab v3 rack. My advice to you is, if you are struggling for resources, memory disk, CPU, then just get rid of the redundant node to save a little bit of those resources. So for example, you don't really need to have a second contact center, Unity and IMP. You can do 95% of the work without those subscriber nodes. You can maybe get rid of your expressway backups, your 2 expressways, number 2 over here. That will save you a little bit of resources as well. You don't have to have 3 CMSs. This is the order of how I would get rid of stuff. You probably want to keep your core manager, pub and sub. You want to keep your VCube, active, your 2 VCubes. You need everything else, but those are the ones I'd get rid of. Your subs over here, okay. Your backups over here. Leave your VCubes 1 and 2. You need that, and your 2 CMSs if you need to start eliminating virtual machines to save some cash. Okay, it's about it for now. Good luck building your rack if you are going to do that. Otherwise, you can rent our racks at Collab. Thanks. Bye.